Good afternoon to members of the media. President Irfan Ali and the PPP have an opportunity to be on this side of law and order and ensure the revelations in the Vice News report are thoroughly investigated and allow the law to take its course. To do otherwise is to be accused of complicity with the alleged crimes of bribery and corruption that VP Jack Doyle is being accused of. At a time when Guyana is poised to earn significant income from its oil and gas sector, it is imperative that action be taken to ensure that a good national example is set. Failure to address the allegations against the VP will signal to all in Guyana that bribery and corruption are condoned by the PPP government. It is also an indication that the PPP is self-imposing the Dutch disease on Guyana. It is even more worrying when it is noted that VP Jack Doyle himself says that, and I quote, "People are coming to Guyana to make money," unquote. How crude. While investors are and must be welcome to Guyana, it should not be entertained outside the confines of the law and authorized offices. From the revelation in the Vice News report, it is clear that the Vice President, as a senior government official, is purportedly guaranteeing foreign investors the support of the PPP government outside of the confines of the law and his authority. This is a clear indication that the state is being further criminalized and not being accountable, a distinction it gained when it was last in government. It is in this context that we must view the government's unwillingness to establish the Procurement Commission and their passing of a motion in Parliament that puts control of the quorum of the Public Accounts Committee in the hands of the government, which was never the intention of Parliament. Clearly, the PPP does not want any transparency, accountability, and the rule of law in Guyana. As leader of the opposition, I condemn the actions of the PPP in reversing all the measures put in place by the APNU AFC to ensure transparency and accountability, and calls on the government to take immediate action to bring a halt to every accusation of high level of corruption in government. The opposition believes that VP Jack Doyle should do the decent thing and resign to facilitate an unbiased investigation. Failure to do so should result in the president relieving him of his appointment as vice president and ordering a full investigation into the allegations against him. Failure of the president to do so will further indicate that the PPP is a corrupt outfit that does not only facilitate corruption, but it is itself corrupt.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. Any questions on the statement from the members of the press? I see Mr. Adam Harris. Go right ahead, sir.
Yes. Good afternoon, all. Comrade, there were some interesting things about the so-called report. First of all, that report is not in the public domain through the regular channel, the proposed channel that it should have been in. I understand that efforts were made to prevent it from being shown on the prescribed television channel in Guyana. And one local television station that was actually showing it was forced to halt that broadcast. Given that we do have copyright laws and all of this, is this an unusual development, sir?
It is unusual in the sense that I can't recall in recent times that has been done, but there was a trend emerging. We noted a lot of times when we were doing our program, meaning we in the opposition, the internet is disrupted, power is disrupted. And so we know for a fact that the government doesn't want authentic information exposing their wrongdoings to be out there. And so I'm not surprised that the government went out of its way to ensure the Guyanese people do not view. Unfortunately for the government, we live in a world of social media now, and people will circulate it via WhatsApp, etc., and the message will get out. And so I believe all of this is in keeping with the government's dictatorial approach to governance. Like I've said on many cases before, the government does not believe in democracy. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not believe in transparency and accountability. And therefore, it is expected they will do these kinds of things to limit information. If one note that when the AP and UAFC was in government, we had put internet hubs in virtually all communities in the hinterland. And one of the things the PPP has been doing is restricting access to it. And in some cases, actually blocking people from being able to access the internet in rural communities with the hope that only their narrative will be pushed and all others will be outside of the reach of the people of Guyana.
Follow up, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
There were some aspects of the broadcast that caught the eye. Mr. Sue would have been operating in Guyana during the tenure of the coalition. And he has been described as someone with large forestry holdings and access to construction of hotel and all of this. How many of these programs actually developed during the coalition time in office, sir?
I could only be frank and honest with you. I do not know. I served in an advisory capacity in the coalition government, and I'm in no position to say anything about the details of those programs. I think it will be best directed to persons who served as ministers, etc., and sat in cabinet.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else on the statement?
Mr. Norton, Denis Chabrol, the Norways. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Norton, given your concerns about what has been reported in the Vice news feature and beyond this press conference, what else do you plan to do?
Well, clearly we will engage the international community. Clearly, shortly, we will be involved in public meetings to sensitize people. We have begun to do our work in the public relations department. And so there are a number of things that we will do to force the government's hand to ensure that an impartial, credible investigation is done into these allegations.
What options are you planning to explore through the National Assembly, if any?
Well, I do know that the most likely there will be a motion and questions, etc. But you know, the National Assembly is not the most efficacious place that you would want to use. So we'll have to use some other fora to be able to achieve our objectives.
Anyone else on the statement?
Yeah, back to the Sue.
Mr. Norton.
Sorry, go ahead, Aubrey. Dennis.
Mr. Norton, you had some days ago proposed a measure which amounts really to a subsidy in fuel, but it has incurred the criticism of the Vice President. He described it as cake shop economics. What essentially is your methodology for having this subsidy implemented, and how financially feasible it will be?
Well, first of all, I think the person who cannot manage a cake shop is Jack Dale himself. If Jack Dale was reading as he claims to, he would see many countries in the world some with oil and some without oil, are placing subsidies. I shared with some people a report out of Mexico, in which Mexico is using its oil income from oil to subsidize gas and the cost of living so that the people of that country enjoy a better life. Secondly, I think I did circulate that Antigua without oil was subsidizing and doing something similar. Now, I think because the PPP regime is so corrupt and they need resources to steal from our treasury, they try as much as possible not to utilize the resources to subsidize our people. And so in normal style, he went out there talking about cake shop economics. But if Jack Doe is an economist, he knows, he should know that you can use fiscal and monetary policies to help and to provide incentives. And in this case, to bring relief to the people of Guyana by way of subsidies on oil. So I think clearly he's just putting a smoke screen. And he continues to say who knows economics and who don't know economics. But this is a man that has failed. Every project he touched has failed, be it the fiber optic cable, be it Skeldon, you name it, the man is a complete failure. And so he is not qualified to even say he's an economist. If you look at his term in office, you will see the lowest level of growth and the most negative growth would have occurred under Barra Jack Dale. So Barra Jack Dale is a mess. We should not take him serious when he make these pronouncements. I saw he purported to be an oil and gas specialist, and when he was asked basic questions, either purported not to know or decided that it is not in his interest to know. So I don't take him seriously.
I wanted to get specifically from you, where will the source of funds be coming from for the subsidy, and how do you see this being implemented?
I think in that presentation, we were clear to point out that it should come from the resources, the extra money. Remember, we pointed out that the oil prices went up. And so you are gaining more. And the difference between the oil price at the time and now, that difference, as I understand it, is enough to be able to subsidize the cost of living, especially as it relates to oil, which will affect many products outside of oil itself.
Anyone else? Question?
Mr. Norton, my final question before Mr. Harris, if you permit, and you'll permit. Sir, in relation to the allegations in the news feature by Vice, from your perspective specifically, what are you holding on to as the key bit of evidence that you believe strikes at the heart of the alleged corruption?
What I would say to you is, one, there are a number of things we should observe. Why is it this wasn't done in the government office, that is the official office? Why is it done in the home of the disgraced vice president? That's the first question. The second question, why should the vice president be telling an investor, I'm gonna make the deal, somebody else will, I can just guarantee you government support. No, but he didn't use guarantee, but reassure them of government support. That signals to me that it's an abuse of power, it's a misuse of power, and it's an exercise of power outside of the confines of the law. Now, I also think that one has to observe, if you look at the interview and look at it properly, when he was asked first about bribery and corruption, he said no. And he was fluent all the time. And then when the journalist said, I want to give it a specific case, do you name Sue? He stuttered. He had to regain his composure before he arrived at whatever point he would have arrived at. If you look at it, you will see he was clearly caught off guard and didn't expect it to come, and therefore wasn't prepared to answer it. And the whole approach was indicative of some form of guilt. So I would say those would have, but there are some others in there that I think should lead in the direction of a proper investigation. That is the task of the police. Of course, we are worried if the Ghana police force will investigate, because politically they have been compromised. And that is why we're saying a credible investigators need to be used, even if it is outside of Guyana. But we think that there is much there to be investigated. And remember, this is part one. So we also don't know what is coming in part two, because there's an indication that there will be a part two. But I believe that, look, I have said before on many programs, the vice president has an opportunity to clear his name, take the assets he would have accumulated, put it in the public domain, and put it against his income. And if it can stand scrutiny, then he doesn't have to worry. But if it can't stand scrutiny, it will add to this case that of allegations of corruption against the vice president. If one looks at how people who are honest develop their resources, develop their wealth, you will see a correlation between their income and how they develop. And if he does that, then he doesn't have to worry. But I doubt whether he would.
Thank you, Comrade Leader. We had another hand up, Mr. Brian from TVG. Go ahead.
Hi, Jara Brian from TVG. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay. In a post yesterday, your Shadow Attorney General, Royce Ford, mentioned bringing an anti-lobby bill to Parliament. Can you expound on this and what this planned bill will seek to achieve?
Well, first of all, I would say this to you. There has to be discussion on the matters more. When a draft is prepared and we are ready to move, we will call the press and expound on it so that they have an understanding of where we're going.
All right, anyone else?
Yeah, question. I want to go back to that Vice News broadcast. Sir, we first got word of this broadcast in February. This is June. What are we talking about? 5 months hence? Stabrook News reported on Mr. Jagdeo now attempting to sue Mr. Su. Why would it take 5 months for his reaction to kick into the allegations when these were made known since February?
Well, I would say that's a question you need to ask Jagdeo. But I expect them to go after Su. And so to me, I wouldn't try to speculate on why it took so long. I sense after Jagdeo himself said Su disowned it, he didn't bother, because at the time he probably didn't even know that Su was taped. So I wouldn't go into much speculation there, but the reality is you're hearing the tape voice of Su. What Jagdeo was contending is no longer true, and an investigation will reveal what the truth is.
Ivor Wharton.
Police. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Adams. Complete your statement.
I can defer to Ivor.
Okay, Ivor, it's over to you. Go ahead.
Mr. Norton, good afternoon. My question is, Su would have said that Jagdeo would have admitted that Su is his tenant. But do you believe that in light of everything we have heard from Vice and from Jagdeo, that Su would have been paying more than rent to Jagdeo at this point in time?
I can only say, based on what Su is alleging, that whatever is received, the vice president, or to use his word, the boss, will share in it. So based on that allegation, that is all I would say, but an investigation will reveal all that we need to know.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Yes. I want to go back, sorry. I want to go back to the police action, police attitude. Last week, the police followed you, comrade leader, from Haslington. And then I see in the newspapers that the police paid a visit to Stabrook News headquarters, accusing them of being in possession of stolen document. Do you suspect that Guyana is slowly moving to a police state?
Well, I said that before, that we are moving to a police state. And I also said from a political science standpoint, when a state becomes involved in the levels of illegalities that we are seeing in Guyana, to conceal the illegalities, to conceal the corruption, to ensure that there is no transparency and accountability, they have to resort to force. And the first line of force that they utilize is the police. If one accepts that the police has compromised itself by being involved in harassing political persons and trumping up charges against the PPP's political opponents, then we can for sure conclude that the police is operating under direct political control. Now, you imagine that the Home Affairs Minister talking about censoring people overseas and putting them on a blacklist when they go into Guyana. That is clearly a suppression of people's freedom to express themselves. It is also a manifestation of the dictatorial nature of the state. And in this regard, the Home Affairs Minister cannot be seen as acting alone. He has to be seen as acting as part of a repressive PPP regime. And one will expect that they will continue to politicize the police force so that they can use the police to achieve their objectives. Remember, they didn't want a proper investigation into the Henry Boys and Harry Singh's death. And the police was used to dilly-dally, and then they come up with what we perceive to be some fake charges, and nothing happened. The same is true with the Orange Boston case. And so the Ghana Police Force is not in a place where it can be considered a credible law enforcement agency. It is right now operating as a political tool for the People's Progressive Party. And so the police will have to work hard to restore credibility. Now, but again, if you appoint a commissioner acting and you violated the law, you yourself, you are signaling to the Guyana Police Force that as a government you are lawless, and therefore you are creating the conditions conducive to the lawlessness that is emerging. Little wonder, therefore, a policeman allegedly goes and executes a young man. What you're seeing is the coming together of the various trends that emerge when a state is corrupt, when a state is dictatorial, when there is no good governance. And we are seeing the manifestation in all of these authoritarian and dictatorial measures that are emerging.
Mr. Norton, we have a question from Kaichur News texting from Davina Bagot. And she said that Mr. Norton said at the previous press conference that the government missed an opportunity to secure better terms for its people through the renewal of the Liza 1 permit. Given that the oil company is seeking approval to start up another project, does the leader believe that government should push for better agreement or arrangements in any new project, if any new project is approved?
I don't know why the same question is coming again, but I've answered this question before. I said the law is clear There are mechanisms in the agreement to address these issues. And I do believe, let me go back to what I said. When we started these negotiations as a country, you were dealing with a lot of risks. You didn't know if there is oil there, etc. And I agree in principle that a company should be compensated for the risks. But having now confirmed the level of oil and gas resources we have, we should as a country pursue obtaining better benefits for this country. I think it is Act 99 or 89, the Oil and Gas Act of 1989, I think it is possibly. But the law provides for whoever is dealing with our natural resources to operate to ensure our people benefit the most. And so in the context of the law, there is much scope for the government to engage and get better deals. In a process of negotiation, you use the leverage you have to achieve your objective. And I think any government should use the leverage it has to achieve its objective within the confines of the law. And I think the government missed that opportunity. And here we are. I believe that in the nature of the government, it is so corrupt that you don't know why they don't want to act. But I do believe that we can engage in a civil manner, Exxon, or all people involved in exploration and exploitation of our natural resources in a way that establishes that we, the people, must benefit. If a big country like the United States of America, Canada, if all of them are seeking more benefits for the people, why shouldn't we? I think we should.
Thank you, sir. Any more question on or off this?
Yes, one quick one. During the Vice News interview, Mr. Jagdeo was heard to say that the darker the population, the higher they tend to, or low, depending on which end you're looking at it, they tend to rate on the corruption index. Having said that, sir, Barbados is dark, Antigua, Jamaica, where are they rated in relation to Guyana on the corruption index?
Nowhere close to Guyana. We know that Guyana ranks among the top when it comes to corruption. So, but you know, there is an element of racism in what is being suggested. It is being suggested that the darker you are, the more you will be repressed and oppressed. And probably Jagdeo should do an internal searching to see if his regime is not operating based on the same approach. I think he needs to take the beam out of his eye before he seeks to take it out of others. And I do believe that in the world that there is the tendency to marginalize and discriminate based on your color. But the PPP government is equally culpable of doing the same thing.
We have another question coming in from Kaicho News. And she has a second part of the question. She said, can he please expound on some specific measures he believes the administration can take to raking more finances for the country, especially since the price of oil has increased significantly?
I did indicate, I think, in the last press conference that we have a team working on oil and gas matters, and at the appropriate time, we will expound. Don't forget, we are a political party that will have to produce a manifesto. We are a political party that will have to outline our vision. And we have to be careful that we don't put everything out there before the right time. So at the right time, we will expound on it. And not only will I be involved, but the professionals. I've long said that no leader should operate as if he or she is the know-it-all. You're guided by a technical team. And as the technical team, when we meet and we complete all our positions, we will put it in the public domain. And the technical team, together with the leader and others, will answer those questions.
Thank you, Comrade Leader. Anyone else? Any other question on or off the statement? No? Good.
Okay, then. You would recall I have a television interview shortly, so.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Comrade Leader. Thank you, members of the press, and have a great afternoon. Good night.
Thanks to you all, moderator, and the press.
Goodbye. Thank you, sir.